What the what? If you're a highly sensitive person like me, you probably noticed something's going on the last few days. And I'm here to tell you. Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm an intuitive energy healer and spiritual guide, and I help people who have experienced trauma to transform their lives from surviving to thriving. I've made that journey myself, and I'd like to help other people maybe avoid some of the mistakes I made along the way, share my tips, tools, and tricks. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 important things that you should know about this current energy. By now, you've probably heard that we have not only a blue moon yesterday, today in at the end of August, but it is also a supermoon, and it is in the sign of Pisces. There's other things that are going on with the planets as well, being in retrograde. But first, I want to talk about this energy shift. It's been pretty sudden. In the last few days, we have been for over a month now in a phase, and I shared this in my previous energy update, that the north node of the moon has entered into Aries. And so there was a lot of really insistent, pushy, do it now sort of energy, bringing a lot of things forward, a lot of changes that all for the good felt too sudden, too quick, too much, could be overwhelming. And now that feels like it's come to a screeching halt. That energy is still there. That north node going into Aries it's going to be in Aries for about 1.5 years. But what's happening right now with this moon is that we had a full moon. It was also a blue moon because it was the second full moon in a calendar month. It's a little bit more unusual to have a blue moon occur at the same time that we have a supermoon. Again, the term supermoon implies that there's something really super spectacular and unusual about it. So it's kind of a bit of a misnomer. It just means that the moon is full at a point where it's closer in its orbit to the Earth than it is at other times. And this is, again, not that unusual, but to have it all happening at once is kind of a bit much. If you look back at that earlier video, and I'll link it at the end to my last energy update, it was an energy of immediacy, an energy of right now, and being an Aries energy is very pushy and insistent and just charging straight ahead. What has happened now with where moving, the full moon is now gone, the moon is now in Pisces. And Pisces is a mutable water sign. So it's like way slow down. What it feels to me like is, I remember once when I was a kid, being on an escalator. And I was young enough that I thought that was kind of really a cool thing. I was like, ooh, escalator, wow, cool. And you know how when you're riding an escalator, when you get to the end, you step off? Well, being a little kid and goofing around, I thought, wouldn't it be funny to see what happens if I don't step off? And if you've ever had this happen, you know that you're moving along with a certain momentum and you get to the end of the escalator. If you don't step, you come to a jerking halt. You're going to land on your butt or your face or something, which is exactly what happened to me. You kind of do a face plant. So that's how I feel this energy shift has been this last week, is we've had this energy of immediacy, and then the moon moved into Pisces and it slowed way down. This can feel destabilizing. If you have any experience of trauma, which you probably do if you're watching my channel, it could be triggering. So I'm just here to tell you that it's not you. It's happening in the collective. It's an energetic thing that's going on, and it's going to be okay. So the second thing that I wanted to address was planets in retrograde. Now, I'm going to let my inner science teacher come on a little bit to explain retrograde motion. People have this conception that it's like moving backwards. it is only an apparent moving backwards. Think about if you are riding in a car and you are going on the freeway and another car that's ahead of you is going slower than you. So as you pick up on them, they appear to be moving backwards. They didn't throw it in reverse and suddenly start heading backwards. It's that their relative motion is slower than you. You are passing them, and they appear relative to your position to be moving backwards. This is what happens when the planets go into retrograde. For the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, this is a fairly regular routine thing because they're between us and the sun, and we pass them fairly regularly and they appear to move backwards. What's unusual right now is we have both Mercury and Venus in retrograde, but at the same time, and I got to check my notes to make sure I get them right, we also have Pluto, Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Chiron also all in retrograde. That's a lot of retrograde motion going on. It's unusual to have so many planets retrograde at once. A little bit later into next week, in the second week of September, those inner planets will shift out of retrograde, go into direct motion again. Pretty routine, but at about the same time that they begin to shift into forward apparent motion, then we're going to get Jupiter on September 4th is going to go into retrograde. So a lot of retrograde. Well, what does that mean energetically? Retrograde motion is like going back and recovering the same ground over and over again. With the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, like I said, that happens fairly routinely on a regular basis. This represents more of your internal experience. So what you may have been finding with these two in retrograde is that old business, old things that you thought you had conquered, maybe some triggers, some pattern behaviors were coming up. Conjoin that with the full moon. This is a time to release those. The moon is full is when we're at maximum achievement. So the full moon is a good time to acknowledge what you've accomplished in the last month, and then to start letting go of those things that no longer serve you. And with Mercury and Venus in retrograde, those are going to be some internal personal things. That's a good time to work on shadow work, on inner child work, on ancestral family trauma, those sorts of things. But as we move in through this next week in early September, as they begin to move forward and Jupiter moves into retrograde, we're going to find more of our external world is going to be influencing us like this. So you may have external circumstances that appear to be a pattern coming into your life that you've already been through. Some people think of it as like a karmic thing. I'm not real fond of that terminology, but that's another way of thinking of it, if you like, is to be clearing karma. The point is that there's patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, patterns of being and expressing that no longer serve you. Relative to trauma, PTSD, CPTSD, these can be really deeply held beliefs and ways of expressing yourself in the world, ways of being that you didn't even really realize that were there until they hit you in the face. With the full moon being in Pisces, Pisces is, like I said, it's a water sign and it's mutable. So it's very slow and it's also very relaxed. So as this Aries North Node energy smacks you into the wall, the escalator stops, you get face planted. What this means is it's time to take a break. That Aries node energy isn't going away, but this is a pause. We have a break here. Don't think of this retrograde energy as a negative thing. Think of it as a time to pause, to relax, to integrate what's been happening, to process it. It's a really good time to do something really grounding and relaxing. I'm sitting outside with my bare feet on the ground. I'm planning to get a massage. It would be a great time to take a hot bath or maybe sit in a hot tub, or if you're lucky enough to have one nearby, maybe there's a hot springs. You can go soak in a hot springs, or just put your feet in the water, go for a walk on the beach, or walk by the lake, or something that's really grounding and calming, and take a time out. Give yourself the gift of just a breather, because it's going to pick up again in another week or 10 days. I want to share with you an example of this retrograde shadow rising type of energy and process. As many of you know, if you've watched my last couple of videos, I was recently back home in Minnesota visiting, mostly staying at my friend's cabin and just hanging out. But because I'm back in Minnesota, I've got a lot of family coming and visiting, and interactions with them. And something that's really came up for me is my relationship with my sister. She's about 2.5 years older than me, and it's been difficult for me lately, maintaining the kind of relationship that I felt that we had, that I thought that we had always shared, which, as you know, being the only two kids in the family, and being close to age, and we shared a bedroom and we shared clothes. I mean, we shared everything. What came to me as I was had an interaction with her that was really, really triggering. I, I mean, like, I bawled like a baby. I bawled like a 2-year-old. What this brought to mind was once when we were little kids, and we were both real little kids. There's no blame here. It's what kids do, right? We had been to the drugstore with our, I don't know, 10 cents allowance or whatever it was, and we each had a little bag of candy, and we were sitting outside in the sandbox eating our candy, and my big sister says to me, "Oh my gosh, you have to eat all your candy right away, right now, or you're gonna die." Well, I was 2, 3 years old, so of course I believed her. And I ate all my candy really fast. And then she taunted me and said, "Ha ha, I have candy and you don't." Oh, I ran bawling to mommy, and and it didn't happen just once. It happened 2, 3, maybe more times. I don't really recall, but I do remember after going to our mother with this repeatedly, she finally said to me, "When are you going to stop believing her?" It happened again when I was there just 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Totally different situation, but the similarities were enough that the neural pathways in my brain that were carved into that trough of response and behavior were triggered. And I responded like a 2 or 3-year-old. Whew. So I had to sit with that. I had to really feel into that and process that. And I realized I'm still reacting to my big sister as if I was 3 and she was 5. That is not the case anymore. I need to let go of my perception of us being an entity like two peas in a pod. We never were. We're very, very different. We have very different lives, very different personal journeys, very different ways of expressing. She's an extrovert, I'm an introvert. It just doesn't fit anymore. You would think by this age I'd have gotten over this, but it was still there. It was so primordial, so deep in my being. Like, she was there the day I was born, and she's always been there. And it took this incident of being triggered, calling on her for help and having her dismiss me, not laying any blame. I'm just saying, like, it was similar enough that I'm like, oh, when am I going to stop believing her? When am I going to stop thinking that she's my other half somehow, that we're like this two peas in a pod? It's just not the truth, and it doesn't serve me anymore. This freed me to let go of my expectations of her. She owes me nothing. I have no rights to say what goes on in her life. And I'm finally really ready to let that go. That's what this super blue moon in Pisces with the full moon is all about. Pisces is all about emotion. It's all about spirit and intuition and going deep and really feeling into those issues, those traumas, those situations. And then as the moon goes from full and it wanes and gets smaller, it's time to release. Let it go. So that's all I have to share with you today, my friends. As always, if you have a similar experience, I would love to hear from you. Put something down in the comments. I appreciate a thumbs up if you like this video. Again, you can comment, hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe. I also will put a link to my website down in the description box if you're interested in finding more about energy healing, spiritual guidance, the type of work that I do. If not, I will see you next week, coming up with more videos. And until then, peace.